back to 1987, an instance of persecution. Now, as I said, today the Baha'is are the largest non-Muslim religious minority in Iran, numbering about 300,000. From its inception in Iran from 167 years ago, one period of which was stated earlier, the Baha'i community in Iran has faced systematic persecution resulting in the loss of jobs and properties, discrimination in education and employment, violence, arbitrary arrest, and unlawful trials, and thousands of individual Baha'is were killed for their religious beliefs. This persecution continues today. Faced with unrelenting religious persecution involving a wide range of human rights violations, including systematic denial of access to higher education, example of it here, by the Iranian government, the Baha'i Institute for Higher Learning, it's called BIHE. If you Google it, BIHE, you will read the bigger story. Was founded in 1987. Classes were conducted in the homes of the Baha'is by Baha'i professors who have been terminated because of their adherence to the Baha'i faith, and attended by Baha'i students who have been dismissed from the Iranian universities, again because of being Baha'is. Once the government became aware of these educational activities, now these are in the basements of homes, it raided those homes, arrested the professors and students, and confiscated their computer and lab equipment. These professors and students were tried on the charges of having acted against Iranian national security and imprisoned. Many universities in the West, including the Yale and Columbia, among others, are now accepting BIHE students. Another episode a bit more recent, 2000 to present. As early as 2008, 7 Baha'is, 5 men and 2 women, who were all members of a national level group administering the needs of the national Baha'i community, were arrested and imprisoned. Some 20 months after being imprisoned without charge, a trial began in January 2010. During this time, they were not allowed access to their legal counsel and suffered psychological and physical hardship. The 7 were charged with, among other things, espionage, propaganda against the Islamic Republic, charges that were all rejected completely and categorically by the defendants. Their crime, though, was nothing more than being members of the Baha'i faith. The trial of the 7 Baha'i leaders ended in June 2010 without due legal process. They were initially sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. This verdict met with outrage and condemnation throughout the world, and as a result, the jail terms were reduced to 10 years. The last of these prisoners were released from prison on December 19, 2018. Today, still a large number of Baha'is are incarcerated in various parts of Iran because of their religion.
Thank you very much. Let me say that on 1975, which was before revolution, Amnesty International pronounced the Shah's government as one of the world's worst violators of human rights. But then Shah met with the reps of Amnesty International and agreed to improve prison condition and rights of the prisoner. And by the way, this was the difference between the Shah system and the system of Iran today. Shah was very important for him to look good abroad, especially the United States. But the turban-headed mullahs, they could care less. They do as they please because their word is the word of God, and you cannot argue with God, you know. In fact, someone asked me about Iran's revolution, 1979 revolution, how it happened and things. I said Iranians got together and they said, hey, we have everything in this country. We are so great, you know. Why not democracy? So they had a revolution to get democracy. They didn't get revolution and they lost everything they had, you know. Yeah. I mean, they didn't get democracy and they lost everything they had. In fact, I say in fact a lot, that in 2018, recently, United Nations General Assembly condemned Iran for violation of human rights. Out of 193 members, only 30 did not vote yes, and 68 members voted abstinent. I should also add that many of the other countries in the Middle East, they are violators of the human rights, but somehow because under the support of US, it doesn't come up, you know. And speaking of the Shah, one thing that I forgot to mention about the old time was the era of the Cyrus the Great. It's unbelievable. I mean, that man, what kind of man he was. I mean, not only he was a very good soldier, but also was a very good diplomat. And usually these two don't go together. He had a huge empire, and yet he had no problem, because they were all free internally, and all they had to obey the central government just for military and for the foreign policy, you know. So he is the one, by the way, who first came against slavery. And 2,600 years ago, he abandoned slavery. There was no slavery in his empire, you know. Yeah, he abandoned slavery, and everybody in his empire, they all live with their own custom, their own religion, and their everything. It's unbelievable. I mean, the mind of this man, as a psychiatrist, for me, is unbelievable how he knew. Like, there were many countries that they preferred to get rid of their own government and join Cyrus' government. Without a war, they would give in to him. That's how popular he was. And Shah also celebrated his 2500 of Iranian monarchy, but somehow didn't work for him. And after Khomeini came, he made himself, see, Shiite Muslims have 12 imams, 12 leaders. And the only reason that it's been 12 is because a lot of these Shiite imams were killed by the Sunnis, who were majority of the Muslims. Sunnis and Shiites are like Catholics and Protestants, you know. And I say facetiously that they are fighting today because they are trying to catch up with the West. Because after all, there was a lot of crime in Europe, you know, between Catholics and Protestants. So they are trying to catch up, you know. So, and then 12 imams, but then because these imams were killed by the Sunnis, the number 12 imam becomes hidden imam. Somehow he hides, so to won't get killed. So he became a hidden imam of the Muslim, Shiite Muslim, and there would be a second coming for him. So after Khomeini, after revolution, Islamic revolution, Khomeini made himself as like another imam, that they call them regency of the jurists, you know. And ever since then, there has been a jurist, you know. So instead of a crown, instead a king with a crown, no, it's in Iran of today, there is a king with turban, you know. That's the way, it seems that it is. And of course, I say that, like I said, specifically, there are a lot of discrimination against the woman, you know. And I told you about some of them, what's going on. Like I wrote a short story in this book about a young girl who participated in uprising against government, you know. And they tried to shoot him, and her male friend, stood in front of her, and he was killed. But then when they put her on trial and she was condemned to death, they found that she is a virgin. And the virgin goes to heaven if she was killed. It's not funny, so sad, goes to heaven. So they didn't know really what to do. And I have a story here named Bullet Rights about that. And many of these things, these stories really, that on the surface, it sounds funny, but they are very, very tragics, you know. And I did tell you about like how the woman gets, at what age gets mature, and all kind of other kind of discrimination. And what's the big deal about the hair of the woman, really? I don't understand. To me, by the way, a lot of terrible things that's happening in Iran today originally was in Europe and in Christianity, and somehow as it was like exported, they stuck to it and they have it, you know. Like especially about those mournings that they have, the Shia Muslims have about those things. So let's see if there is any question, discussion, or anything. And I want to thank Dr. Roshan and Dr. Mahajer for their contribution. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah.
Questions?
Yes, so things aren't getting any better?
I'm sorry?
Things aren't getting any better?
Things are getting better as far as people are concerned. Actually, I say that the best service that this government has done to the country is that has made people sacrilegious.
Okay, yeah.
You'll be surprised if I tell you that Iran is probably, from what I have seen, I've been in many countries, Iran probably is the least religious country of the, of the Middle East.
Wow, yeah.
And part of it is because of the government. Because people say that, hey, if that's what it is, then what the hell is this? Like, let me tell you a few stories about my trip to Iran. And this happened to me quite often, In Isfahan, I went to the Armenian Museum, because there were a lot of Armenians in Isfahan. They were at least. And I saw that a note by the king of the time, King Abbas, who didn't want the Armenian to be Christian, to pay taxes and things. And I shared that with my cab driver, that this is what I saw in the museum. In my response, he started cursing the mullahs, that there is no anybody worse, mother effing, bigger thief than these mullahs,
Yeah.
And I had trouble to understand the question, the connection. He told me one time he was sleeping in his house, midnight, and his Armenian neighbor, and his door was knocked. When he opened the door, he saw the Armenian neighbor, who told him that his daughter was arrested by moral police. Please take me to their office. He said that I got dressed and I took him over there, and there were a bunch of these people who they were like kind of, like they call them in Iran, they call them knife wearers. Here, its translation would be guns,
Thugs.
gunslingers,
Yeah, fine.
because there's no gun, These are those kind of people. So I told him that this gal is Christian. Her crime was that her hair was being seen, and her skirt was short, He said, I told him, she is a Christian. They said, no, it doesn't matter, So anyway, they said that he should go and bring the deed of his house and put there, to promise that his daughter would go to the morality classes, so that they would let her go, And he said, she said, I told him, he has gained weight, she has gained weight, and they were not too rich to buy more clothes. So that's why her skirt was a little short, because that's gained weight. So what I mean, I know, any time I put this, I would talk to someone.
So he lost his house?
No, he didn't lose it.
No, he didn't, no.
Just, it's like going to, what's the word? You put it there as a...
It's a lien.
As a lien,
right.
That you know,
Yeah.
he lost it.
Were you, when you went to Tehran, were you free to go anywhere?
Yeah.
You weren't, it wasn't like Eastern Europe where you were...
No.
watched.
No, I was free to go anywhere, but also, I remember I took the train one time. They have underground train, And there was a man, an old man. In fact, I have a very interesting story about here. Lifelong love. There was an old man. He came in and he was cursing as he came in. These SOBs, they took my wife, they have took my wife away from me, and I'm afraid for her. She doesn't know, her mentality is not good, she's too old, and blah, blah. Because they didn't want her to come to the same train as the men were. Men were in one wagon, and
different
women
cars,
were in
yeah.
the other. And he was cursing like mad. And he was all, what I mean, people attitude. People are not kind of afraid to say, to express their feelings, when they say.
You're not nervous about getting arrested when you're there? I mean,
No.
you do hear about that.
I'm very I would not go back, because after I think I wrote probably mine. In fact, a friend of mine here, American, was read my book. He says, Jawad, if you go to Iran, I guarantee that you don't have to pay anything for hotel. Because the room must be reserved already for you in the prison.
Other questions? I have a question about Baha'i. Is this the same group that's active, say in Evanston, Illinois, where they have a big church?
Oh,
It's an atheist group, is it not?
No.
I've actually been in that place.
No,
I've been there too.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Well, in any country, there are like 9, 10 of them at the moment. They're called Baha'i houses of worship. They are built by the Baha'is, but they're open to all religions and denominations. If they want to have a moment of quiet and to say their prayers and stuff, they're welcome to go there. Baha'i faith is a monotheistic religion. As I implied in my brief thing about the history of the Baha'i faith, claim that Baha'u'llah actually puts forward is that he's the promised one of all the previous dispensations. In other words, to the Islamic faith, he's the advent of their promised one. To the Christian faith, he's the advent of second coming of Christ. The claim is very profound. So to answer specifically to your question is that the Baha'i faith is a monotheistic religion.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with them. I used to attend their firesides back in the 1980s.
Oh, firesides?
Yeah, the Baha'is.
Yes.
They have them over here. They have what they call firesides, where you meet people's souls and discuss things.
Yeah, the fireside that he refers to is basically a very informal gathering of Baha'is and non-Baha'is that want to learn about the Baha'i faith or its teaching or its history, so it's a fireside chat.
Yeah, there's one night, and they even showed a film about the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran and countries. So I've been aware of it ever since, like, 30 years.
Uh-huh.
I think 30 years.
Were you a member of the Baha'i?
I was born to a Baha'i family, but because of that question, we don't inherit our religion. In other words, even though I was born in a Baha'i family, at the age of 15, 16, it was actually my own study of the religion, not only the Baha'i faith. I went to a class, I actually read the Bible, I read the Quran, I read the Old Testament and New Testament. I say Bible means New Testament and Old Testament. And then in addition to that, I had the opportunity to read and examine the Baha'i books. It was my decision to become a Baha'i at the age of 16, 17. Somebody recently asked me, are you a practicing Baha'i? I said, there's no such a thing because it's not a compulsion. It's not like I'm a Baha'i because I was born in a Baha'i family. I accepted Baha'i faith for what it is on my own, right? In other words, when I accepted it, obviously that's, and believe me, it's, first of all, the teachings of the Baha'i faith is the belief in one God, and in different traditions that super being has a different name. Like in the Islamic faith, in Arabic language, they call it Allah. I found it very, very insulting when some people say, oh, the Muslims don't believe in God, they believe in Allah, because Allah means God. The same creator that we in English refer to as God is referred to.
It's just the Arabic word.
Yeah, it's Arabic word. So it's very inaccurate to say the Muslims don't believe in God, they believe in Allah as if Allah was an entity or an object, which is not accurate.
Yeah, but you're Muslim too, so how do you get along?
Oh, we're friends.
I said you were Muslim.
Attitude has changed. one of these very conservative Americans, a member of this tennis club, and there are many conservative people there. He was cursing the Shiite Islam and everything, you know. And he thought he was like doing something against me when he was doing that. I say you are absolutely right about everything you say, because because Islam was taken from Judaism and Christianity. So you are right when you say it's terrible, you know, because it was taken from those two religions. And then I said that what you don't realize is that you are about 50% Muslims. He said, how do you mean it? I said, well, you believe in God. You believe that Jesus was like the prophet of God. All the Muslims believe that. You and Muslims have a lot of beliefs in common.
Your cousins.
Well, how bad is it for the Shiites? Can they get jobs? It's a Sunni country, right?
Well, Iran is a Shia country, just reverse.
It's a Shia country. Are they Sunnis left? or-
Actually,
Are there any Sunnis in Iran?
yeah, there are Sunnis. There is a
But
Sunni
can they get jobs, or are they just,
yeah, they are okay.
they can own real estate and do some of the things that
Actually,
haven't-
Iran does a lot of things abroad about those things, but inside the country, there is no problem of that kind with the Sunnis, you know. And also, to their credit, there hasn't been any Iranian so-called terrorist to go and blow himself up to kill somebody. And there hasn't been like that in Iran. And it was done, one time was done and was by, it was the foreigners, they were from the Arabs from other countries, you know.
When did Iran stop being called Persia?
Oh, that's it, okay. But actually Iran has been always Iran.
Ah, okay.
But then it was, in the West, it was Persia.
I see.
And the reason for that was that they had conflict with the Greeks, right?
Okay, yeah.
So the Greek referred to these people, and there is a state of Pars in Iran, where Shiraz is located. And Persepolis, the capital of Persian Empire, is that a state of Pars, you know. So they refer to them as people who have come from Pars, Persians. And this went to the Western literature, and Iranian became Persian. And then, at the 1914, the father of this last Shah, Reza Shah, decided that Iran would be Iran inside the country and outside the country. So they officially became Iran everywhere. And since I mentioned Reza Shah, father of this Shah, when I was in Iran, I heard a joke, which is very interesting and relates to discrimination and to the turban-headed mullahs. You know, I like to tell you that. They say that somebody saw Reza Shah, the father of the Shah. First of all, I have to explain that in Iran, when like they say that Ron was a great guy, they say, God bless his father, he's a great guy, you know, like that. God bless his father. They don't say God bless him, they say God bless his father. It's a common expression. So someone saw Reza Shah sitting at the door of heaven, with this beautiful woman, you know, waiting to get in. This was a joke in Iran. Iranians are humorous too. And this guy said, what are you doing here? Reza, you were in hell. What happened? He said, yeah, people in Iran all said that these mullahs are terrible. God bless Shah's father. God bless Shah's father. God bless. So God called on me and said, Reza, all the Iranian people want you to be blessed. So I want to send you to heaven. So you take that beautiful, and I give you this beautiful woman, and you go there, but you have to wait for a mullah, a Muslim mullah, to come and make you officially married so that you can go in. And I've been waiting, sitting here for 5 years. No one mullah is inside, or no one is coming to get us married, you know.
So that was the end. My great-grandfather was born in Dharamsala.
In what?
Dharamsala in
Dharamsala.
India. Well, you know, the British, you know, they were in India. And what's interesting is my brother went to try and find some records of him, and everything was in Persian.
Well, actually, Persian was official language all over that area.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Iran is like, had influence anywhere from India, like the top poet of Pakistan was singing his poetry in Persian. All those countries, north of Iran, south of Iran, you know, they're all, you know, Right now, for example, is a Persian New Year, and it's being celebrated almost all over the area.
Yeah, on that point, 330 million people celebrate Nowruz, which is the Iranian New Year. It's because of the fact that at one time Iran had, this was sphere of influence of the old Persian Empire or the Iranian government.
I think Suzanne wants to say something. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I know this is a big question, but what do Iranian people feel about the U.S. government, like given our various kinds of history with Iran, like the Shah and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, Iranian people, they are very, they love Americans. Yeah, they love Americans and America. But they don't care as much for the U.S. government. In fact,
That's kind of us, isn't it?
in my opinion, as a psychiatrist, the Iran Revolution of 1979 dates back to 1952, when the U.S., toppled the democratically elected government of Iran to put the Shah, in charge. And then the country since then became quite dictatorial, which, and people were very resentful about that. Like personally, as a student, high school student, I was very active in the students' movement then for nationalization of oil, which was being stolen by the England. And after that coup, people became very resentful toward America. And that was the dynamic of the 1979 revolution. What I mean, people were ready to accept something. But then Khomeini kind of cheated everybody in a sense. He was supposed to go to the holy city of Qom and pray for them to succeed rather than rule. But he became the ruler,
Well, we're running out of time. What I liked about this is the sort of general theme of the human rights problems in all countries. They really go back to the history, the political history of the country, and how the culture developed. And you brought that out very nicely, I think, in Iran.
Thank you.
We see it here in the United States, but our human rights problems are all based on our history and political situation as well. So, hi, Joshua. Any other questions?
Behind you.
I have a letter. Question.
I don't know if
Denise.
it's a question. I recently, it might be a question. Just the other day I was reading that, since we're talking about cross-cultural influences, I was just reading that Islam, of course, being a patriarchal religion, was predated by a matriarchal religion. And how the divorce, where the husband says, I divorce you 3 times, in the matriarchal tradition, the wife would take the tent, and here's the entrance that her husband would enter, and she would turn it this way so the entrance was over here, and she would deny him entrance 3 days. So it's the 3 times thing.
Yeah,
And then it was
but that's very interesting because, like I said,
Wow.
for example, Jews have Saturday holiday, Christians have Sunday as holiday, Muslim came on the Friday holiday.
Right.
Maureen?
Yes, Maureen.
Just thinking about today and the situation and, the threats that our government, feels, that they have to, up our defense and whatever. But what about, the young people and the internet and all that information that in '79 really, they didn't have that, and yet they were thinking they were going to get democracy, a good number of them, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. And like now, I would think there'd be even more drive, to overthrow that government,
Yeah.
but
Dr. Marjan, you are more technical than I am, and Dr. Roshan.
Well, having lived here for a long time, I basically have divorced myself from the old country. Earlier on, when the revolution had happened, I sort of very, enthusiastically would follow all the events. At some point, I decided I got to sever that relationship. You know, I'm American, of course, by birth. I'm Iranian, but I lost interest in all the